Hello horror fans and welcome back to HorrorScoped. Today we'll be looking at a found footage type of game that seems to combine a few recently popular ideas from the indie horror genre and throws it all into a fictional Nintendo 64 game pack. Come with me into an alternative timeline of reality as we explore the story of Shipwrecked 64. Our story begins with a purchase on eBay, something a number of us in the classic gaming scene may be all too familiar with, as we track down games from yesteryear. A seller by the name Daniel has in their possession a rare piece of gaming history which up until now has proven unable to be emulated. The buyers in this transaction happen to be a group of indie developers seemingly looking to preserve the game, and upon purchase, took it upon themselves to take the game files and rebuild it into a playable form for PC. So begins the game. As the game pack is inserted and brings up the opening movie, it shows footage of creepy-looking children's mascots, apparently on a boat at sea. This group becomes lost as a storm deserts them on an island inhabited by wolves, who are not too pleased about their arrival. With their landing evidently disturbing the typical peace and quiet of the island, most of these mascots are taken captive by these wolves, only to be freed upon the completion of the respective minigames for each mascot. The protagonist, Bucky Beaver, is tasked with taking on these games to release his friends. So, what are these games that the wolves seem to fancy? Well, the game set as the prerequisite for Olive Otter's release is a simple collection game with coconuts as a target. There is a time limit in place, but it is a simple task to complete. For Giovanni Goose to be freed, Bucky must prepare meals for the wolves, but keep watch on the many ovens being used and prevent them from catching fire. Things start to get a bit weird as we try to bargain for Walter Walrus's release, however. Bucky must climb to reach the mascot's wrecked boat, all while being chased by some force of darkness that literally shuts off the sun. In this game of red light, green light, if Bucky moves when the sun goes out, the darkness takes him, and the game is lost. The games only grow more eerie as we arrive at the challenge the wolves set for Bucky himself, in which we must enter a labyrinth with a literal demon, and try to escape it while looting enough treasure to appease the wolves. Upon the completion of all these tasks, we can approach the repaired vessel and depart the island. The experience was a bit questionable, but we got our happy ending, right? Well, things aren't truly as they seem to be. This game, at its heart, is a mystery that needs to be unraveled. And though this ending would seem to be good, it is actually the bad ending. There's no easier way to reveal the deeper story at play than to simply fail one of the minigames, as doing so will trigger cutscenes that begin to paint a disturbing picture. For instance, if Bucky fails a cooking challenge presented to him to free Giovanni, a piece of footage is shown that depicts someone being violently assaulted by someone in a Bucky Beaver costume. The victim's head is repeatedly struck against an appliance before, presumably, being burned to death upon a stovetop. This is not the only piece of apparent security footage hidden behind these mini-game failures. If we fail Walter's game, the darkness takes Bucky, and we see footage from what appears to be an office. Again, someone in a Bucky suit is present, and is quite obviously murdering someone in the video. This developing theme is set in stone if we fail Olive Otter's game, which provides us with an audio recording instead of raw video. In this recording, a woman by the name Olivia Finch is filing a complaint against someone named Brandon, a coworker who is quite obviously stalking her. Olivia is trying to submit this complaint anonymously, likely to try to prevent any sort of retaliation against her. Brandon, in this claim, makes his presence obvious by approaching her window while wearing a Bucky Beaver suit. Sometimes he would stare in the window while placing his hand on the glass. Other times, he may try to jiggle the handle to the sliding door, as if trying to gain entry. This, of course, is absolutely unsettling and completely worthy of being reported. The final straw was an incident where he slammed his head against the door for hours, well into the night. The costume freak finally left well into the early morning, leaving a disgusting stain on the window surface. Then there is Bucky's own game. If we allow the demon to catch Bucky several times, the game is lost. Unlike the other failures, this one provides us with a line of text that reads, "There is nothing for you here." This is all obviously creepy, but what does it all mean? There's another possible ending that can be observed by choosing to leave the island after these discoveries. And while this ending is quite unnerving, showing live footage of deranged versions of mascots sailing on the boat, it is not the answer to the mystery. So what is? Well, this is going to require some investigation and a little theory crafting. So get your tinfoil hats ready. The first and most obvious fact to put into place is that in all the footage we've encountered, the Bucky mascot we see is Brandon Lester. This is confirmed after seeing this footage as we are shown some sort of medical sheet for this man. Though strangely, the picture features the Bucky costume as opposed to his own face. Creepier still is the fact that this paper denotes Brandon is being dead, seemingly have died due to an overdose of fentanyl, although it is misspelled on the paper. This page also mentions having a target of Bucky Beaver and a verdict of being successful. What exactly could that mean? Well, interestingly and horrifyingly, we may have some sort of Five Nights at Freddy's and Poppy Playtime fusion on our hands. Let's dive into what really seems to be happening here. Got your tinfoil hat in place? Good! A lot of the theory crafting we have to do to try to put this mystery together involves taking information found in the game and combining it with information taken from the game's files themselves to try and paint a cohesive picture. Let's begin with Brandon. The medical file we just spoke about also mentions something called a starling. It mentions it in connection with a company named Broadside Vacation. This happens to be a subsidiary of a larger Broadside Corporation as a whole, which also houses Broadside Animation, the branch ultimately responsible for the creation of Bucky the Beaver and the other mascots. Bucky as a character has been around since his creation by a man named Rex Broadside back in the 70s. Rex, likely the creator of the Broadside Company, if his last name is any indicator, evidently passed away in his sleep during July of 1972, but his creations lived on beyond his death. I say lived in a manner that is both figurative and literal, as the Starling Project seemed to seek something awful, bringing these beloved mascots to life using the corpses of human beings, with the mascot costume serving as a type of shell. The ultimate goal of the project, apparently, is to have these living mascots, these starlings, to inhabit Broadside Vacation's theme park. This notion is terrifying. Obviously, who would want a murderous monster like Brandon walking around families who are simply out to have fun? Clearly, not the game developer behind Shipwrecked 64, Connor Thomas, probably. If things weren't muddy enough already, it's about to get worse. Through the previously mentioned gameplay requirement of having to fail minigames to uncover bits of the story, we find ourselves with new tasks to complete. Secret doors appear within the game and must be accessed to unlock the game's true ending. These doors contain rooms holding medical documents, much like the one we encountered for Brandon, aka Bucky. If we collect these documents and head for the repaired boat, we're shown another cutscene featuring some sort of creepy doll that asks us to recover a number of wooden dolls hidden around the island. With every doll that is collected, a piece of footage is unlocked that begins to explain the development of the game itself. Enter Connor Thomas, the name we mentioned a moment ago. Connor is a game developer behind Cogware Games, the studio that Broadside hired in order to make a video game starring their mascot Bucky Beaver. This relationship deteriorated, as Connor seemed to be more interested in making a game that his son would enjoy, as opposed to adhering to the vision that Broadside had for the franchise. In a heated exchange, the CEO of Broadside, a man named Mark Mullins, fires Connor and seems to axe the development of the project entirely, despite its basically completed state. Mark is extremely dissatisfied with Connor's creation, believing it to be completely unrecognizable from the Broadside Bucky Beaver brand. From here, we're led to believe that Connor throws himself to his death from the roof of his home. This is not the end, however, as he leaves a final request behind for his son. Having left instructions behind for this purpose, he asks his son Pat to encode video files into the game from his camcorder. These videos happen to be the hair-raising footage of Bucky Beaver's murders that we saw earlier. Through coming through the game and its files, we also uncover the names of the victims and their ultimate fate as test subjects for the Starling program. Within the game, once the dolls are collected and all the associated footage is viewed, we return to the game world, this time an open field with a single door. If we enter this door, the credits play and ultimately lead us back to the game's title screen. However, this time it features a hunched-over, lifeless Bucky, who seems to be missing their eyes. A fitting piece of imagery for all this horrifying information, which simply continues to get worse. As mentioned, these living mascots, dubbed Starlings, were meant to populate Broadside Vacation's theme park, Futureland 2020. This theme park was itself a front for the very inhumane experimentation that was producing the Starlings in the first place. These scientific procedures, if you could call them that, took place in a secret facility located beneath the park itself. Brandon Lester was the first Starling, or at least the first successful one. From notes in Olivia's testimony, we know that in life, Brandon was already unwell, with numerous interactions that should have been called into question by any normal type of company. The rabbit hole goes deeper, however, as all of Brandon's victims, including Olivia, were themselves used in the Starling experiments, with the company covering their murders as accidents. Gary Wilson, a mascot handler who was killed in the kitchen. Nathan Stewart, murdered in the office. Olivia Finch herself, who was ultimately drowned after being invited out to the lake. All of these deaths were cover-ups, and the manner of their deaths were reflected in-game, via the environment present where the information was uncovered. Everything seemed to be well in hand from Broadside and their highly questionable ethics, until the video game was put into development, led by someone holding solid evidence against the company. One man could bring it all down. But did he? Despite the fallout surrounding the game's development, Broadside ultimately opted to print the game as it existed, in a limited run. This, presumably, was likely to try to recover some of the funds that they had dumped into its development. The game was pulled from store shelves once the company realized that there was footage within it, added by Pat before print, that revealed a number of their company accidents to be anything but accidental. This, however frustrating, is where the story is left to dangle. We don't know what kind of punishment, if any, that Broadside received as a result of this. Nor do we know Connor Thomas's actual fate. Did he die by jumping off himself? Or was it simply another cover-up on the part of Broadside? Connor could very well be on his way to becoming a Starling himself. There is also the burning question of just how Connor was present to record all these murders. Some of these occurred not only on the company premises, but after hours at that. Further, the videos feature dates from the 16-bit era of gaming long before both the Nintendo 64 or the idea of a Bucky video game ever existed. Just who was Connor Thomas really? For now, we unfortunately just don't know. So what did you think about this alternative reality story and all of its loose ends? The game is, itself, the latest entry in the larger Broadside Beach universe. For this video, we want to keep the focus on the Shipwrecked 64 game, but the history of the Broadside company goes deeper still. Rex's last name, for instance, was not seen in Shipwrecked, but was given in a previous entry. It's certainly an interesting dive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and give the series a search if you'd like. Until next time, my friends, cheers.